Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today, let's talk about February. I read 15 books this month, so let's talk about them. We'll start with Menace. It's a romance about a mafia guy. He's involved in the mafia in some way, and then the female is a prostitute that works for a rival gang, I guess you could say. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Our guy, Lorenzo, he was this hardened criminal that everyone was afraid of, and he had this street name, and he had this reputation, and you would see him doing puzzles and stuff. It was just kind of off kilter in that way. It was just funny and enjoyable. The con was actually the ending. So not to spoil anything, because if you enjoy romance, I recommend you read this, but it was left on kind of a cliffhanger because it's a series. And because I don't plan on reading the second one, because there's elements in it that I don't really like in romances, I probably will never know what happens, the ending to that. I guess if I get curious enough that I will just pick it up and read it, but that was really the only negative I have, and it wasn't really a negative because that's just part of books. That's just part of them being a thing in series and all that stuff. So, Prudence by Penelope Douglas. It's basically a reverse harem romance about a girl whose parents pass away, and she is sent to live with her step-uncle, her dad's step-brother, and his 2 sons. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The pro was that I understood why each person was in her life and how they made her life better or helped her grow as a person. And I liked their relationships and what each person meant to her. My con was that about 75% of the way through, she has this emotional event happen, and her response didn't really make any sense. Like, this event happens, and she responds she gets very depressed, and it didn't make any sense because the prior story didn't set her up to respond that way. And I also didn't really like the ending. I didn't really agree with who she ended up with. It was set to be a 5 out of 5, and then the ending really bumped it down to a 4. This book I read quick. It's probably one of the smuttiest books I've ever read. It is intense. It'll make you feel a lot of things, and it's good, but I just didn't like the ending. Birthday Girl. This was a 5 out of 5 for me. This is about a girl and her boyfriend who move in with her boyfriend's father after they get evicted from their apartment. A romance buds between the girl and her boyfriend's father, and I loved their relationship. There wasn't really a single thing that I disliked about this book. If you are into romance, I would highly, highly recommend this book. It has an age gap, so she's 19 and he's 38. So if you're not, if you're weirded out by that, then I would avoid that, but it's perfect. The relationship development is perfect. Penelope Douglas does a gorgeous job of showing you why one character should be with another character. And you could understand why the dad's protectiveness and her desire to be dependent made sense, and you could see them grow into their relationship and grow from their relationship. It was so good. It was so good. If you don't read any other book from my recommendations, read this book because it is so freaking good. It's so good. It is so good. Like, I have all of these pros, but then when I had to think of a con, all I said was I would have liked to see their struggles in the community more, but even that's not really like a con. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good. After by Anna Todd. I gave this book 1 out of 5 stars. What is there to say about this book? It's okay, so it's basically about this girl who goes to college and she meets this guy and it's their relationship. But the whole book is like hot garbage. The whole thing is the main character, the male Hardin, abusing our other main character, Tessa, emotionally the whole time. And the book is like 530 pages, and it's like they fight and they make up, and they fight and they make up. Like, you'll have one page where they start a fight and then you flip the page over and they're like making out again. And then the ending was like, there's absolutely no character development. Our main character, Tessa, is a stereotypical goody two-shoes that thinks that anybody that wears short skirts and dyes their hair or has tattoos and piercings is like a garbage person. And she's incredibly judgmental, and the whole time she has this like superiority about her, that she's a virgin and all the other girls around her are not. And it promotes shaming of women, emotional abuse, and toxicity in relationships. That's all it does. And about halfway through the book, I was like, there's no way that people think that this is romance. There's no way that someone thinks that this is a good relationship. It has to be an example of someone's psyche when they go through an emotionally abusive relationship. It has to be. It cannot be a romance. It can't be. There's no way. There's no way that someone thinks that this is romance. Let's move on because I'm getting heated about that book. So, Cursed by S.J. West. This is the first book in the Watchers trilogy. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was just an average book. It really was set up for the rest of the series. From what I understand, this series is like 25 books or so, and I think each one of them is about 300 pages. It was an easy read. It is about a girl who goes to college and she meets this guy and they fall in love, and she finds out that he is an angel that fell, and when angels fall, they get turned into vampires. I'm sorry, if angels fall and they have relations with a human, they get turned into vampires. Or if they fall because of humans, they get turned into vampires. And their offspring are werewolves or shapeshifters. The concept is interesting, and I think that if the writing better, it would be more attention grabbing, because I want to read the series. And my mom was originally the person that kind of like turned me onto it and told me to read it because she loved it. And so, of course, it's my mom, so I want to get into it, but I'm having issues with the writing. I think that the writing is very juvenile, and part of it is I don't know if, because this book was a setup for the rest of the series, that there's a lot of underlying plot points that we don't get yet, if that makes sense. So, for example, she is in college. The first day of her first semester, she meets this guy named Brand, and almost immediately they're in love. And by the end, they're like completely in love with each other. But it's not even, it's like a couple of weeks. I think it's like a span of 2 months or something like that. It's also noted that she has like a specific thing in her that makes other mythical creatures react to her in a certain way. So maybe that insta-love was a reaction to whatever she has going on. Like I said, this is 25 books. So I don't know if the issues that I'm having now are there for a reason or not. But it was an average read. I gave it 3. It wasn't terrible. It was interesting. It was enjoyable. It was an easy read. And I probably will continue. Defy by L.J. Shin. This is part of the Sinners of Saint series. This is a novella. It's the second book. It's a novella that follows, I want to say, Jamie and Melody. In the first book, Vicious, we were introduced to this couple as a student-teacher relationship. And so when I picked up the second book, I knew that it was about their relationship and how they started. But in the first one, we also know that they eventually get married and they have, I don't know if we know they have children. I think we, but we know that they get married. So we know that their relationship works out. But I was kind of intrigued. I mean, it's a student-teacher relationship. He's 18, so it's not technically illegal, but it's a little morally gray, I guess. This book ended up being a 2 out of 5. I thought that the novella part actually hurt the story more than it helped. Didn't get to see any relationship growth at all. We basically started the book on like page 2 with them starting their sexual relationship, and that's pretty much the entire book. And then by the end, they're like fighting for each other, but you don't really understand why. You get told about, you know, their late nights watching movies and stuff at her apartment, but you don't see any of it. It's hard to root for their relationship because you don't understand why they're together. You get the sexual aspect, you get that they're attracted to each other, but you don't get why they want to be together. So it was tough. It definitely didn't have the grasp that Vicious did. And I don't know if it's because I don't like novellas. Maybe novellas just aren't my thing. It was good. I mean, I gotta stop saying that. It was quick. It was only like 150 pages. And it was smutty. So if you're looking for some like quick, sexy stuff, then it's good. But I think I was more invested in learning about the relationship than the book or L.J. Shin wanted to give. And then after that, I actually read Ruckus, which is the third book in the Sinners of Saint series. And this follows sister of the girl from the first book, Amelia, and the best friend of Vicious, and their relationship, like their relationship. They've had feelings for each other since high school, and they're now adults. I gave this 3 out of 5. Their relationship made sense. I understood the attraction. I understood how her personality fit with his personality. But we didn't get anything about their relationship until about 190 pages in of a 330 page book. The book very much felt like it was about Amelia and Vicious, our couple from the first book. And so I felt like those 190 pages could have been removed and we would have been okay. Obviously, I got through the book, so there was, you know, spurts of them being together enough to keep me interested, but the relationship that I was there for, that I was trying to read the book for, wasn't the main point, the majority of the book. And it detracted from the story because I was there to read about them, not read about a couple that I had already read a book about, you know? Next, I read The Promised Neverland, volumes 1, 2, and 3. This graphic novel series are about orphans that are raised in this orphanage altogether from basically the time that they're babies, and pretty early on they find out that they're in this orphanage for some pretty dark reasons. I gave this series, what I read so far, I've given every single volume 5 out of 5. And I think it's very well done. The art style is very bubbly and very fun, but the storyline is so dark. And I think the contrast is very intriguing. All the bright places. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. This book was tough for me. And I actually sat on my ratings for about a day and a half because the ending of the book made me really think about it. And I didn't know, it kind of left me in this place that I was just stuck in this story. And I couldn't figure out how it made me feel. I couldn't figure out any of that. And I had to sit and think about it. And ultimately, I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars, which sounds weird because it stuck with me. But when I really thought about the story as a whole, I saw I saw some issues with it. I really loved Theodore Finch. He is the male main character in the story. He, throughout the story, expresses, he goes through a lot of depressive episodes, and he spends the majority of the story trying to feel okay. And he grasps onto different identities and different hobbies, and eventually he grasps onto our other main character, Violet. He does this to make himself feel alive and feel okay. He had previous experiences with depressive episodes that he couldn't remember, and so he is desperately trying to find himself or find something that will keep this at bay. Our other main character, Violet, she was incredibly underdeveloped. Beyond recounting her past, she didn't have any place in the story. She served as his object of affection and a person that he poured his feelings into, but she wasn't a character herself. She didn't have a sense of person. And I think that really did a disservice to this book, because the idea of the book is that they are, or the way that it is portrayed, is that Theodore shows Violet that life is worth living. And I don't think that we really saw the impact that he had on her. We were told the impact at the end. We get that aspect of it, but we don't see really any growth from her, I don't think. I don't think she becomes a different person. I think the person that she was in the beginning is not much different. She has some character growth as far as fears. She overcomes some fears and things like that. She was done a disservice in this book. It is a very hard book. It deals with a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of them aren't handled or addressed. A lot of them are brushed aside, and you see a lot of the impact of stigmatizing mental health. And I just don't think that the care was put into Violet that it should have been. I think that a lot of people could see themselves in Violet. Violet was dealing with grief, and I think that this could have been a very relatable character and a lasting character that a lot of people could have felt a connection to, and I don't think that she was done well. So I actually listened to the audiobook of Daisy Jones and the Six. This is about a fictional rock band in late 1960s into the 70s. The book is actually written in an interview style, and the audiobook worked really well with the way that this book was written, I think. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is by the same writer, and it has kind of the same feel, but in that one, I didn't finish it because I felt like the narrator, hey, what are you doing? I felt like the narrator had interjected their life into the story too much when I just didn't care about their life. And Daisy Jones and the Six didn't do that. You actually didn't hear anything from the interviewer until the very end. And the audiobook did a fantastic job because each person interviewed had a different voice actor. And the interview style worked really well with that. I did not like Daisy, and I didn't like Billy. They were insufferable. They were extremely unlikable. And I don't necessarily dislike unlikable characters. I don't think that every person or every character has to be perfect with no flaws. But they were so unlikable that I couldn't stand some of their parts. Like, it actually ruined a lot of scenes for me. And one of the bandmates, Eddie, the entire time, he is made to seem like he just complains about everything and nothing's ever good enough for him. But I agreed with him 99% of the time. His main issue was with Billy, and all of his points were valid. I think that having two unlikable characters was just too much. Just keep it to one so that I have one person I dislike and I like everybody else, because they were really annoying, and it really did a disservice to this. And I honestly teetered between a 3 and a 4 star with this, because I had to really ask myself if I liked the majority of it, and I did, and I thought it was well done. But I was like, they were just so annoying that I don't know if I even liked this book. Fire and Nerve by Marissa. This is a graphic novel. I believe that it is a continuation or a retelling of Cinder, her series, the Lunar Chronicles. But honestly, I didn't read enough of this to really know. And I only read about 70% of Cinder. I didn't even read all of the Lunar Chronicles. And I think Marissa Meyer and I should just go our own way, because I don't think we're not gelling, and I think I should just give it up. Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This was my second 5-star read of the year and the month. This is a middle grade book about a girl who believes that she is cursed to die on her 12th birthday. And on her 11th birthday, she gets saved by a guy named Jupiter North, who takes her to a magical realm, and she spends the remainder of the book fighting to be in this magical society. I freaking loved this book. I'm currently reading the second one, and I freaking love that one too. Jupiter North, who is the woman that saves our main character, our main character's name is Morgan. He saves her, and he makes me think of George Weasley. And I just like picture an older George Weasley with like a beard, because he's like this redheaded guy that's just really quirky and really funny, and he plays pranks, and he's just like this good-natured guy, but he's really compassionate, and he fights for Morgan. He makes a family for her, a family that she's never had, and he shows her the love that she never had. And I just freaking I loved everything about this. Everything. I loved every single character. I loved the world. I loved the storyline. I loved the ending. I loved the villain. I loved everything about this. And if you don't like romance and you don't want to pick up Birthday Girl, but you like fantasy, pick up this, because it is It is so freaking good. It's so good. Next is Teen Titans Raven. This is a graphic novel that is an origin story of Raven. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't anything mind-blowing. The artwork was pretty. And the last book that I read, I technically finished March 1st. But I'm counting it as February because I struggled through this book for like the last week of February. And if you watch my reading vlog from last week, I was like having a crisis about the fact that it took me a whole week to read this book. Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. If you're not aware, this book is about a guy named Laszlo Strange who's a librarian. He knows that there is this secret city named Weep that has some magical stuff going on and he wants to figure it out. The entire time that I was reading this book, I was like so adamant that it was going to be a 5-star. Like I kept saying this might be the third 5-star of, and I'm gonna love it, and it was so good, and like I told everybody that it was gonna be a 5-star, and it just wasn't. Like I gave it 4 stars, but it was so, I don't know if it's because I like overhyped it for myself, or because I was like in a slump, and I just wasn't feeling fantasy. Like halfway through this book, I had to put it down, more than halfway, about 80% of the way through. I had to put it down and pick up and reread Birthday Girl again that I read in the beginning of the month, because I was just like, if I don't put this down now and try to get myself out of this slump, I'm gonna hate this book. Like, I don't know if it was because of the slump or that the plot was so slow. It was so slow. And then, which is fine. If the characters are developed well and the world is developed well, that's fine. I'm cool with that. But there was so much buildup. And by the end, I was so underwhelmed. Like, this book is like 530 pages. And by the end of it, I was like, why is this book so long? There's the plot, nothing has happened. And then when stuff did happen, I was just so underwhelmed and not pleased. And I get that it's the first in a series, and maybe when I pick up the second one, I will reread the first one, but I was just so sad. But we're counting it as a February read because I read like 460 pages in February, and then I read the last 100, because it's 560, not 530. I read the last 100 March 1st. So we're counting that as a February read. But that is all of the books that I read in February. If you liked this video, make sure you like it. If you like this sort of content and, you know, make sure you subscribe down below. Comment anything you want to comment, and I will see y'all in my next video.